Okay, we are today in the sugya of chavilas. The Gemara says in Kufes and Beis, going on the brisa, which is Bnei Chabura Shayu Mesuvim Kiddush Aleim Hayom. The bottom of Kufes and Aleph, Mevian Lo Kos Shal Yayin B'Omer Alav Kiddush Hayom. B'Sheni Omer Alav Berchas Hamazon. So we have two separate kosas. Dibra Yehuda. Yosef Omer Ochel V'Holach HaTekshach. Gomru Kos Rishon V'Arach Alav Berchas Hamazon. B'Sheni Omer Alav Kiddush Hayom. So Yossi also that you're allowed to go and keep on eating until Shabbos. You don't have to be mafsik. You can first bench and then make kiddush, like we saw in the previous sugyas. So you have one kos for Berchas Hamazon, a second kos for kiddush. Amai, effect the Gemara, v'nimru l'travayu achadaka. So let's say both on one kos. Amrav Huna, Amrav Sheshus, and Omer shtei kedushas al kos echad. Can't say two kedushas, which the Rashbam says means two mitzvahs. Kolomar shtei mitzvahs. Berchas Hamazon and kedusha and kiddush are called two mitzvahs. We'll see why the Rashbam said, chose those words. Whenever Rishon says kolomar, means that there's something that's not pashup shot, and they had to be motzi and be pashup shot, and so that's what kolomar is, always taking it to another level, something you wouldn't have known for pashup shot. So because the lashon is two kedushas, which you could interpret in a number of different ways. So he says kolomar, it means two mitzvahs can't be al kos echad. Why that's so? My timer, Amar Nachman Bar Yitzchak, the fish ain't osa mitzvahs chavilos. So once the Rashbam elevated the two brachas that are being said on this coast to be mitzvahs, because we have a concept of we can't do mitzvahs chavilos. So the Rashbam had to be male the Indian of saying kiddush to the level of mitzvahs in order to make sense of this Gemara that we're comparing two brachas to mitzvahs chavilos. You can't do two separate mitzvahs that way. In fact, the Gemara v'lo v'atanya nichnas the beso motzi Shabbos v'varach al yayin v'al ma'or v'al psamim v'achakach omer Abdallah alakos. So we'll see more about that in the following sugya. But in the meantime, we're saying that you go in, so you're making Havdalah, and you're nichnas the beso. So we're talking about how you're going to be benching, which is the question of what is nichnas. With nichnas, why are you eating a suda? That's the question. But so being ein lo ela kos echad menichol achar hamazon shal l'kun lachra. So we're assuming you're benching over here. Which how do you fit in benching to you just walked in? That's the question. So we see that you do two things: benching and the havdalah if it's on the same coast. Ein lo shiny. And you shouldn't. But if you only have one coast, then better to do them both on the same coast than to not do on one of them at all. Let's say not to bench on a coast. So in other words, the concept of enos and misses chavilos is a mila. It's a mila, but it's not the kuva. So if it's better to do misses chavilos than to do it in a way than to, let's say, I'm in kaim chavilos, I won't do two on one coast, and therefore I won't bench on a coast. That we don't say. We don't say that chavilos overrides not doing it at all. It's not that type of an isser. It's a mila. We're assuming that we're talking about Yom Tov after Shabbos. You have wine. You have another kos because we assume you have wine for Yom Tov. Mamrav yakana. So he says to make kiddush and havdalah on the same kos. I mean, since it didn't say yaknahaz, it just said yakna. So when do we have a kiddush and a havdalah at the same time without a zman? It's talking about the last day of Pesach. We could say leislate. We could assume that you don't have any wine left by the final day of Pesach. We could assume maybe it's the last kos you have left over from all the days of Pesach. The first day of Yom Tov, for sure you have, because you have other days of Yom Tov coming. And still, Abaya said to make kiddush and havdalah on the same coast. Rabba Amar Yaknahaz. So how could that be? How could you do kiddush and havdalah on the same coast, even though you have another coast? You can't say leislay, islay. El havdalah v'kiddush chada milsahi. The reason is that you can't do mitzvahs, chavilas. That means it's two separate mitzvahs. But when it's considered in some way to be considered the same mitzvah, if there's something that pulls the two together to be considered the same mitzvah, so then it's fine. Then you're allowed to have, it's not considered chavilas because you can't package together two separate mitzvahs into one package, but anything that's considered the same mitzvah, it's not a problem of packaging it, of putting it together, because it's really the same thing. And the Rashbam explains that it means Kedusha Abdallah Chadam Ilsehi Tarvayu Mishum Kedushas Yom Tov Imenu. Both Kiddush and Abdallah are coming because of the Kedushas Yom Tov. Abdallah Atzmahu Maskir Kedushas Yom Tov Damavdu Ben Kodesh LaKodesh Mevarach. You're making a bracha Hamavdu Ben Kodesh LaKodesh, which in that bracha you're mentioning the Kedushas Yom Tov. So the Kiddush, which is all about Yom Tov, and the Havdalah, in this case, the Havdalah is also about Yom Tov because it's Mavdil between, it's being Kodesh LaKodesh is the second Kodesh. The first Kodesh is Shabbos, second Kodesh is Yom Tov. So you're mentioning both in the same bracha. It's considered Mela, a type of the same mitzvah, not a problem of Chavilas. That's the way the Rashbam learns. So the Rashbam is using the Lashon Shtei mitzvahs. So I think that you can understand a little bit more when it's another level. He needs to say that to make a pashut shot in the Gemara, as we said, to make it fit into the concept of chavilas, which is you can't do two mitzvahs chavilas. So he has to show us how the two brachas are considered shtei mitzvahs. But going a little step further, there's a Tosfos later on, Kuf Tes Vav Amud Aleph, referring to talking about it's Tosfos over there is, I think it's called Shutibel of Amashka. Let's see. Which Tosfos it is there? Oh, yeah. The Tosfos Dvar Maskal V'Chadar Achil and Kutas Amud Aleph is talking about the eating. You make a bracha of a dama on the karpas, and that the same bracha is also going on the morer. So he brings in the end of that Tosfos, B'Shem Reb Yom Tov Ilan says in his siddur that why did the other yerachos come first? To pater the chazeres, the morer from a bracha that's ruila. And he says, "V'lo shaya kan chavilos, ela b'trei mili." It's only you can ask a kasha that maybe that adama that's going on the karpas and it's also going on the morer, maybe that's chavilos because it's going on two separate things. So Tosfos says that it's not shaya chavilos because it's only shaya chavilos by trei mili, which the Maharsha there explains means two mitzvahs, meaning that the first bracha that's being made on the karpas, it's not be'etzem a mitzvah, it's chiyuv to do it, but the bracha you're making is really brichas hanenin. So it's just, 1 second, someone's knocking. Sorry.
What daf did he say?
Kuf Tes Vav Amud Aleph.
Kuf Tes Vav. Okay.
Basically, Tosfos is saying, according to the Maharsha, that if you have your yotzei a particular mitzvah with that bracha, and also it's birchas hanenin for something else, that's not a problem of chavilos, because chavilos is two mitzvahs, and birchas hanenin together with mitzvahs is not considered with a mitzvah. That's not two mitzvahs; it's just two different things. But it's not a problem of chavilos.
How does that fit? Why would there be a havamina that bracha hadama to be chavilos? You're saying you're eating karpas and you're eating chazeres. It's two different things that you have to make a bracha before. And it's like I assume we'll see it, but the cases in the Tosfos with birchas erisin and suin, like you can't make more than one hagafen.
Oh, very good. So we'll get to that in a minute. It's an interesting question. The Rebbe Kveger over there mentions on that Tosfos to look at another Tosfos in brachas and Daf Lamed Tes Amud Beis. Tosfos there is talking about a similar question. He's talking about how you're supposed to do the hamotzi and the birchas achilas matzah on Vel Pesach. So the bottom Tosfos and Lam Tesman Beis and Brachos Hakol Modin. So he has two shitas over there. He says, what you're saying is it's an interesting question. He says, you should make a bracha in the tzoa ki im ala shlema ba'ala prusa yivarach al chilas matzah. You should be batzeya on the shlema, and then on the prusa you make the second bracha al chilas matzah. V'korchem v'ochem shneim yachid, eat them together in order that it should be looks like you're being batzeya on the prusa also. He says, "In lasas hamotzi v'gam al chilas matzah min a prusa." You shouldn't make a hamotzi and al chilas matzah on the broken piece. To have a kaosa mitzvahs chavilos. Very interesting, right? Fascinating Tosfos. That would be considered chavilos if you make both brachas on the prusa. That's the first sheet of Tosfos. V'nira li, I'm not sure who was quoting before, just some shita, but v'nira li the habi bracha shel nenin v'enim nikroim chavilos. He says that would not be considered chavilos. To do that, it's not a problem because hamotzi is not a birchas mitzvahs, it's a birchas nenin. So to make a bracha of birchas nenin and a birchas mitzvahs on the same piece, that's not chavilos because it's not two separate mitzvahs. The kiddush mevarchim kiddush birchas yayin haraya. Every time we make kiddush, you make repiah gofen and the bracha of kiddush all in the same kos. So why don't you tell it that's all chavilos? Answer is no. One's a birchas nenin and one is birchas hamitzvahs. So that the two together on the same kos is not considered chavilos. Which Kreger brings this down to that other Tosfos to show that the other Tosfos is holding like this Tosfos that's the pshat in Tosfos, like the Marsha says, that to make a birchas nenin and a birchas mitzvahs, that's not a problem. So that's what the Rashbam, I think, a deeper meaning of the Rashbam is saying by us, why he says those words, Kolomar shtei mitzvos, back by an sugya, he's coming to tell us that it's only when it's two mitzvahs, not when it's, in other words, we're talking over here about brachas altogether. So maybe you'll get mixed up and you'll think that anytime you have two brachas on the same thing, then that's going to be a problem with Avilas. Says Rashbam, no, it's only when those two brachas constitute two mitzvahs. But one is just birchas nenin, like Tosfos says, and one is birchas mitzvahs, then that would not be a problem of chavilos. That's just a deeper pshat.
Rav, can one possibly say that both karpas and maror are both zecher tziat mitzrayim, and they aren't a mitzvah in and of themselves, or are they both separate mitzvahs on Lil Seder?
The karpas, the Gemara says that the reason we have it is in order to is just that they should ask questions. So it's a chelik of the Seder, but it's not the getter mitzvah really. It's just there to have the kids ask questions. The karpas itself is not really a zecher or anything.
Okay, thank you, Rav.
All right.
Is Rabbi saying that the Rashbam, how's Rabbi lining up the Rashbam with the first sheet and the Tosfos and brachos?
So hard to hear you.
Sorry, is Rabbi lining up the Rashbam with the first sheet of Tosfos and brachos?
No, the second sheet, I think. I mean, that's what I would say. That you say kolomar shtei mitzvahs. Let us know that there's the whole concept of chavilos is only when there's shtei mitzvahs. The first sheet of Tosfos seems to say that there's a problem with chavilos even when it's just two. It's hard to know what that means, but maybe we'll see more as we go along. Some other possibilities in that. So, like what have you just said? So this is very very much ties into the Tosfos over here. The question of the chuppah to make sheva brachos. Because each of those things are a separate mitzvah. Birchas hamazon and sheva brachos are considered separate things. You don't do it, so you don't do it on the same coast. El Mavin coast acher. Vein mevorchan l'sheni b'pir gofen kevish par birach holocaust birchas hamazon. So that's the first sheet of Tosos is that you need 2 kosos for Shavuot brachos, one for Shavuot brachos, one for benching. There it's 2 separate things, like the Gemara says. Benching and kiddush are 2 things. The Birkas HaMazon Gorem, the Birkas Nesuin, the Birkas Erison, the Nesuin. Okay, Gorem the Birkas Nesuin. The Birkas HaMazon is what's Gorem. Chazal were only misaken to say Shavuot brachos at a meal when you're sitting and eating a meal. So in a way, even though they're 2 separate things, but the Birkas HaMazon is what's Gorem to be saying these Birkas Nesuin. And in that way, since one is Gorem the other, that's considered Chara Mitzvah according to the Rebbeinu Meshulam. So, and the Maisa, this Machlokas Tosos of Rebbeinu Meshulam, it's an important Machlokas. It's brought lahalacha in the Shulchan Aruch in Simon Samach Beis and Ibn Ezer, which we'll see a diuk in that. Soon we'll see a diuk in that halacha. The Chaber, there's a certain word he says there, but just to read it out, the Pasuk Shot. Samach Beis Sif Tes. Yesh Omrim She'ein Lomar Shavuot brachos al Kos Birkas HaMazon Ela maybe Kos Acher Omer Allah Zayin brachos Choser V'Lakeh Kos Birkas HaMazon Omer Allah Brei Brei Gav. So first day of the Shulchan Aruch, the first Yesh Omrim is that you make you need 2 separate kosas, like the first sheet of Tosos. Yesh Omrim She'ein Tzarech Ela Kos Shel Birkas HaMazon Ein Tzarech Ela Kos Birkas HaMazon Mevarach Zayin brachos V'chen Pashat Minig. Shulchan Aruch says that the minig is to make it on one kos, like the Rebbeinu Meshulam in Tosos. And as the klal, as you know, is that when the Shulchan Aruch brings a Yesh Omrim and another Yesh Omrim, then he's passing out like the second shita. We point this out a few times. Just when he brings it first shita stam and the second one Yesh Omrim, then the halacha is like the first shita. But when he brings 2 Yesh Omrim, then the halacha is like the second Yesh Omrim, and that's what he ends off the Chen Pashat Minig. But the Ramah says Fakirat and Medinas Elu Noagim Kasfara Harishonam. The Ramah says the minig is in our places, the minig Ashkenaz is to make it on 2 separate kosas. So we'll get a little bit more into the Lashon of Shulchan Aruch soon and Samach Beis over there in Ibn Ezer. But it's an important machlokas. Now we have so far, the Rashbam is giving us one shot and why it's considered Chad Milsa. Why Kiddush and Avdal are Chad Milsa, because they have the same mention in both. You're mentioning Yom Tov in both. So that's the Rashbam makes it into mamish one mitzvah. It's hard to know if the Rashbam would agree to the swore of Tosos that if one is Gorem the other, they're 2 different things really. Just one causes the other to come. So according to the Rebbeinu Meshulam, that's enough. According to the first day she did Tosos, that's not enough. The fact that one is Gorem the other, they're still shtei mitzvahs, so they're still considered chavilas. The Shita of the Rambam says that it's in Perek Chavtes of Shabbos halacha Yud Beis. Perek Chavtes halacha Yud Beis. It says Haya Ochel b'Shabbos Yatsa Shabbos V'hu B'soch Sudasoi. So you're getting to Motzei Shabbos, you're eating Shal Shudas, and Motzei Shabbos comes when you're in the middle of your Suda. Gomer Sudasoi, you're allowed to keep on eating and finish your Shal Shudas. V'notel Yodav and Mavar Perek Samozan Al Akois V'charkach Mavdil Alav. So the Rambam paskins that you bench and make Havdalah on the same kos. The Ravid there says, Amar Avram b'she'ein lo ela oso kos. That would only be if all you have is that kos, because the Gemara by us says that benching and kiddush are 2 separate things, and ein lo shiny. It's only if you don't have anything but that, then you make it both, but otherwise you can't. So the Ravid is applying what the Gemara by us says by kiddush and benching to Havdalah and benching as well. That's only going to be b'she'ein lo. But the Rambam wasn't machalik. The Rambam is mashma that you make it in kos achad even if yeshlo. He didn't stipulate ein lo. So then it's mashma for the Rambam that for some reason kiddush and benching is different than Havdalah and benching. Kiddush and benching, the Gemara says beferish. The Rambam's not coming to be so the Gemara. The Gemara says beferish. Kiddush and benching is trey mili. You need 2 kosas, but it didn't. The Gemara didn't speak about Abdullah. So the Rambam saying no, you can't extrapolate that. Talk about Abdullah. Why? Says the Maggid Mishnah. Shot in the Rambam is that.
Where is the Rambam again, Rabbi?
I'm sorry.
Where is the Rambam again?
Perek Chavtes of Shabbos Halacha Yud Beis. Should I see inside? So the Maggid Mishnah explains that when is it considered chavilos? He says only Birchas Hamazon and Kiddush. Why? Because Birchas Hamazon, he says, is al ha'avar. It's going on the past. It's going on something you did before. The Kiddush, in Kiddush is on al ha'asid. The Kiddush is going on the asid. It's going on the Shabbos, which is coming. So the benching is going on what was before, and the Kiddush is going on what's going to be. One's al over of al asid, that makes it into shtei mitzvahs. It's considered 2 separate things, and to put them together would be chavilos, unless einlo, but otherwise you can't do it. But it says havdalah tarvayu ala avar. When you make havdalah and bench on the same coast, they're both going on al ha'avar, on the past. Birchas Hamazon is what you ate before, and Havdalah is on Shabbos that's on its way out. We'll see more about that in the coming sugya, how we look at that. But Havdalah is ushering out the Shabbos that's leaving. So it's going al ha'avar. It's not going al ha'asid. So if they're both al ha'avar, then that's considered chada milsa chada. It's not considered 2 things. But it's not a problem of chavilas. That's the Maggid Mishnah. And the Meiri, in his second parish over here, he brings the Rambam down. He explains like the Maggid Mishnah as well. He has another pshat which is interesting. He wants to say that Havdalah is Drabanan and Birchas Hamazon is Deraisa, and it's only a problem of chavilas by 2 mitzvahs Deraisa. The Meiri says in his first pshat. So I don't know how to deal with that. That's another a whole other thing. But this Maggid Mishnah and then the second pshat of the Meiri say this pshat in the Rambam. So that's very. I mean, it's a very difficult thing to understand. Why would Avar Ba'asid make that into 1 mitzvah or 2 mitzvahs? It's still in the past. Isn't benching and Havdalah still 2 completely different things? And how does Avar Ba'asid make a difference? So either I just don't know pshat, I don't understand pshat, which is probably the most likely pshat, or maybe a possibility is that al avar over here is more of a borrowed term. It's not just the fact that it's on the past. It means al avar, we had the Havdalah going on to usher out the Kedusha Shabbos, and the Suda that you ate was the Suda Shabbos, which is the ched of Kedusha Shabbos. We have to eat Shalosh Sudas per Shabbos. So they're both going al avar, meaning on Shabbos, that they're both a chelik of Kedusha Shabbos. They're both referring to Inyane Shabbos that was Shabbos, that was in vogue before, it was in place. So they're both going on Inyane Shabbos al avar. Then maybe they're tied together. They're considered in some way to be a mitzvah achas. Mashenkin, if the benching is on what you ate during the week, during Friday, and now the Kiddush is going on al asid. So one's just going on pure benching. It's just going on achila ba'alma, nothing to do with Shabbos, and the Kiddush is going on the Shabbos coming. So then it's like hamavda ben kodesh l'chol. You have Shabbos and weekday things. It's two inyanim. So the same benching could sometimes be the same inyan, or sometimes it could be 2 inyanim if it's tied together mitzad the Kedusha Shabbos. Perhaps. I mean, it's a little bit ikar chasam in a sefer. Say that they don't spell that out. They just say al avar al asid, but maybe they mean a little more than they're saying. So that's a possibility. So now you could also don the shaila of erison and asuin of Tosfos. Tosfos has 2 questions. Tosfos had a question of the shavar brachas and of benching. But then after that, Tosfos went on to say that Birchas Erison and Asuin Nagu Lomar al Shtei Kosas. Under the chuppah, right? We have we use one kos for Birchas Erison, and then we stop and we read the ksuva, and then we have a second kos for Birchas and Suin, for the Sheva brachos. He says no Lomar Shtei koses. The time of the Regilim is able to. So the reason for that, he says, Betsim, that the Regilus was back in the Gemara Ksuva says they used to do the kedushin in the Beis Chasanim. They would do it at home. They would sometimes a year before, and then they would do the Nisuin much later. They're totally separate, no shaykhs to each other. So
is that masma that if they're doing it together, then you should make it in one bracha though? You should make one kos?
Well, he's explaining why it was that even if they are together, you still make them separate because the Regilus was to make them separate. So Mela,
why is that?
It just remains separate.
So I'm saying with the Regilus, is either it's still. I mean, why would it be a violation of, unless he's not saying it, a violation of Chavilos? Why would the Regilus define what you're doing like when they're together?
So it sounds like he's not necessarily saying. It sounds like really it could be on Kos Echad. It wouldn't be a problem with Chavilos because it's no worse than or it's even better than Rebbeinu Meshulam. The ones on benching altogether, it's on something else completely, and then it comes to, and then you have Sheva brachos. So Rebbeinu Meshulam holds that even that could be one kos, and for sure Eresim and the Suin that one Yishar Zebelozeh for sure. Enlecha Yishar Zebelozeh Yosem is that you can't have the Suin before Eresim, so they really could be on Kos Echad. So he's really bothered more by, according to Rebbeinu Meshulam and even according to himself, why that maybe you could say they're mamish, like the Gemara says in Kedushin, it's all mamish one thing, Eresim and Suin in a way. So why wouldn't it be together? So he's coming to explain the other way around. Why are they separate? Not why are they together? And that he has to come on to say because there was a gillis, they were nitkan separately. It happens to be we stick them together now. But in order to separate them, he says to keep them separate, we read the ksuva in between.
Well, I'm saying, like, why? It sounds like there's a something pushing us to separate them.
Yeah.
But if the only way we separate now is with a ksuba, like the regilas could have been that we don't separate them anymore. We do it all under the chuppah.
Yeah. So I guess since the tchilas at the kana was they were totally separate, so it became that way. And then in order to just retain that, we read the ksuba in between. It's a question. Reading the ksuba in between. Rishon Zalman in his ksavim over here and his notes has a big question on the minig that what we do. That why should there be two Brei Pri Hagafins? Especially if the Masada Kedushin is the one that's saying all the brachos, which often happens, like in the Rabbanut. You go to these Rabbanut weddings, there's sometimes the only front person there is the Rav, and he schleps along one other person or something, and the Rav says all the brachos. And a lot of the Sephardim did also. So he already said Brei Pri Hagafin once on the Birchas Erison. Why should it say a second Brei Pri Hagafin? And it gets involved in the whole shal of the Rif and everything. He says, to say that the ksuba is Iyashar to read the ksuba and to make a bracha at the same time is shver because there's no chiyuv to really read the ksuba, and we said it's only a thing that's mechuyev etzem to do. That should be a hefsek. And Kol Shekan, he says it's shver according to the Sephardim that paskin not like the Rif. That you make only the first and third kos. They paskin that halal and Haggadah are not a hefsek by the Seder, and even though there it's mamish mechuyev bitoch the suda, and you're not allowed to drink while you're saying halal. Even so, they're paskin it's not a hefsek. So because not really has chadas. So then why would you make a second Brei Pri Hagafin for Sheva brachos? Once you stay in the other, you just made your Brei Hagafin. You didn't go anywhere. Same chassan kala. So he says, "Be shlema." If you're making it just for the chassan kala to drink, then even that's I guess that's even more, in a sense, even more difficult. Just for the chassan kala drink, you're not drinking at all. Then then the chassan kala already drank. They already made Brei Pri Hagafin. So now there's no real hefsek. He sort of remains with the kasha. Doesn't really have a good answer for it. goes back and forth the possibilities, but he remains with the kasha. The minute he gets to make a second one, it makes it easier if somebody else comes up and makes it that, and especially if you drink it, someone's going to drink it besides the chazan and kala. So anyway, it's not a simple thing. This whole, but the Maisa, he's coming to show that he has to find reasons why it should be on two kosas, because really it makes more sense. It should be one kos.
So I'm just confused because earlier he said by Sheva Brachos after the meal.
Right.
He says ain't nachal mevarach pamayim. It's not proper to make two brachos. Right? We said that we don't do the kos and berachas hamazon. So to me, I thought that was mashal. I was like, that's the bracha hagafen is not what's like the leikuv over here necessarily. We have to make a bracha, like what we said earlier. Why is it by the berachos erisin and nesuin? Why is it proper to make two brachos then? If they're together, I mean, that's I guess kind of like
that's what Shlomo Zalman's kasha. That's exactly this kasha. Why would we make two berachos there? And he doesn't really have an answer. I mean, he tries a few things and he knocks everything he tries. He knocks himself knocks off. So the kasha is better than the teretz. So kasha in the minute. I mean, it's still a minute. No one's going to change it, but it's taka kasha. Just to throw this out before we go further, the Ram Chalava, one of the Rishonim in the Sugya, he has a shot. He says the why is a kedusha achas by the Kiddush and the Abdullah here in the Sugya. The why is a Chara Milsa. So he says that Iyashar zeh below zeh. The Iyafuke Shabsa Yuli Yomtov Yomtovu Yulu Yomtov Afuke Shabsahu. It can't be one without the other. It can't be. You can't have Yom Tov coming in unless Shabbos goes out. Shabbos can't go out unless Shabbos is coming in. So the fact is that the two are like intertwined. That's what makes it into Chada Milsa. Mashenk Kiddush and Berachas Hamazon, so they're not Haba Talia. They're not totally one in the. So and then he says the second svara that similar to what we said before. It says Kiddush and Abdullah are both before the Suda. So that also makes them into Chada Milsa. A lot of sforas going on in the Rishonim over here. What makes the things into Chada Milsa? And each one we can really spend time on finding, which is just interesting to see. One thing which Shlomo Zalman does say though in his notes is that when Tosas says that it's a very interesting shaila, very geshmak diuk, which we'll just throw it out as just to know as the idea. It's important to know that, and the Rebbeinu Meshulam that wants to say that it's all one thing, that the Rebbeinu Meshulam make kosecha because he says the trick here that the benching is gorim the birchs and the suin. That's what the Rebbeinu Meshulam says. So Rebbeinu Zalman declares if it's a raya from here that this Rebbeinu Meshulam holds like the Shitas of Rambam. The Rambam, it's very meduyik in the Rambam in Perik Beis of Hilchos Brachos, Perik Hey Beis of Hilchos Brachos, where he brings down Sheva Brachos. The Rambam is very fascinating. He brings down Sheva Brachos in benching, together with benching, in the middle of the halachas of mentioning like Yalav Yavo on Rosh Chodesh and Yom Tov and Ritzei on Shabbos. And together with that, he brings down Sheva Brachos with benching. And he goes on and brings other examples of things you mentioned, Me'in Ma'ora, whatever that's going on. So Rosh Zalman is just Maram, a beautiful shtickle Torah that we see from the Rambam that Sheva Brachos is not something which is nitkan to say with benching. But it's considered, they made it as a chelik of the benching of the Nesuin is benching with Sheva Brachos, like you have Ritzeyan, and the benching is a chelik of the benching of Shabbos. That's the diuk from the Rambam. So Rosh Zalman wants to say that you don't have a raya from the Tosas, this Rebbeinu Meshulam holds like the Rambam because there's a different svara. You say one is gorim the other. The lesson Rambam should be is it was nitkan to be part of it, not one is gorim the other, but it's a chelik of it. So it's masha that benching lechud and Sheva Brachos lechud, and Ben Bishul still holds its chada milsa because one causes the other, and that's enough to be together. But the Rambam would hold it for sure. It would be enough on one coast because Rambam holds it's all one thing. It's all one halacha. But he says enough gemina between the two would be, we have a halacha that according to most poskim that you can't say Sheva Brachos even if the Suda happened during this, while it was still, they'll say the last day of Sheva Brachos. Often you have a problem. You eat the Suda near the end of the day, and once the Sheva Brachos themselves have to be said during Zion Yimei Mishta, not just the Suda. So they, what people do is some people do is if they see the time is almost finished and they don't have time to really bench say Sheva Brachos before Shkia. So some people will just take a kos in the middle of the meal and do all the Sheva Brachos in the middle of the meal before you bench. He says that's a minhag that some have. So he says that minhag is not so pashut because it depends on these two shitas. That Bishleim according to Rabbeinu Meshulam, and if the benching is garim, what it means that the benching is garim, the chiyasuda, it means that it's not the benching itself that's really garim. It's really the fact that you're eating a suda that has benching to it. That type of suda needs Sheva Brachos. You have a chassan kala, and 10 people, a suda that needs benching also needs Sheva Brachos. So it doesn't matter really if you do it after the suda or during the suda. You could do it. But according to the Rambam, that it's a din in benching. The Sheva Brachos is not a din that goes together with benching, but it's like Ritzei in benching on Shabbos. It's a din in benching. It's like Mein Amora that was Nitkan is a chelik of Birchas Hamazon. So then you can't just stand and say brachas, Sheva Brachos in the middle of the meal if you're not benching yet. It needs benching to say Sheva Brachos because it's a chelik of the benching. That'll be enough communal halacha between Rabbeinu Meshulam and the Rambam. Okay, so we'll go to the next step, the next shaila in the sugya. That we have to understand what is the whole yesod of the Isra of Chavilos. How do we understand this? When Kler Chakira, is it a din in the etzem mitzvah? It's considered like a bizayon of the mitzvah to do it by Chavilos. It's on the chetza of the mitzvah. It's considered like bizui a mitzvah. It's considered missing in the mitzvah. Or is it a din in the kavanas agavra? It's not missing. It's not a bizayon of the mitzvah. Just that for me, it's telling me don't do mitzvahs chavilas because I have to focus properly on the mitzvah, and I can't do that if I'm focused also on another mitzvah. So this seems to be clearly a machlokas Rishonim. The Rashbam by us says, "Dear Mascha chavilas." Rashbam says, "De michsi alei kamasoi." It looks like it's a masu. It looks like it's like you try to, I really don't want to do this, so I don't want to do this mitzvah, so I'll try to, as I say, kill two birds with one stone. I'll try to, get it out of the way, couple together. So that, and Rashi and Tosas and Sota, Chesamad Aleph, we're talking about soon, the Sugi and Sota of Chavilos, say the same lashon over there as well, like the Rashbam here. So they're all learning that it's this mixel of kamasui, which I'll just throw out a second chakira in the Rashbam and Rashi to say this, is mixel of kamasui, is that mitzad maras ayin to other people, or is it mitzad yourself? Is it mixel? It's the mixel alei upon yourself. When I do it, I'm making it like a masui on myself, so it's like pogea and my. For me, it's pugim in the mitzvah, or is it pugim in the mitzvah beside others to see it? So maybe we'll come back to that, but that's a chakira within the chakira. Is the bizayon beside the oiseh mitzvah, or is it beside the others that see it? Or maybe both.
I have a hard time
Maybe it's both.
Understanding that, like it's such a subtle. I had a little bit of hard time still, like understanding when it's like nirlo kimasui is like. When we're going through all these differences in cases, it's such a subtle difference between whether they're considered two mitzvahs or not. Like, I don't know, just in Svara, is there like what's the source of it? What's the, how does it develop? Like why, like we're like almost like splitting hairs, and what's considered chavilos. Like what's into that?
It's a good question. Hold the question for a minute, because we'll raise a question which sort of touches on your question. We'll see, and we'll come to this. So just first we'll spell this part of it out. That I mean, side echad we have Shitas Rashbam and Rashi and Tosas and Sota and Rashbam by us. This says Mixalo Kamasoi, which we're just wondering if that means on himself or others or both. We have Mitzad Sheni, we have Tosas in Moed Cotton, which put that in the Marmar Kamos, and Daf Chesam and Beis in Moed Cotton. It was interesting when I was learning this during the sugya. We exactly hit that daf in Daf Yomi as I was working on it. And I thought, oh, that Tosas, Kishmak, here it is. Here's our sugya. So Tosas there is Madama, the din of Ein Marvin Simcha B'Simcha. They're talking, Tosas speaking there about Ein Marvin Simcha B'Simcha, the sugya there. That you can't have Nesuin on Yom Tov because Ein Marvin Simcha B'Simcha. It's Tosas Moed Cotton Chesam Abeis Divrei Maskil Lefi. I think I have it here.
Just parenthetically, while Rebbe's looking up the Taisvis, that whole sugya over there in Moed Cotton with the Kfura and the crypts and everything, I have pictures from the catacombs in Italy, from the Yiddish Beis HaKvaros.
Yeah.
If you want to see Lamaitza, what they look like, I can send them.
I'm dying to see that. Michael, you missed that.
What?
I said I'm dying to see that.
Oh, it was a late night last night. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Here Tosafos says, "V'she'en marvin simcha b'simcha." Tosafos says here, and this touches a little bit on your question also, according to Tosafos at least. He says, "Gzeres hakasav kedadarsh l'kamon mikra de shlomo." It's Gzeres hakasav we darshan pasuk in Shlomo. You can't be marv simcha b'simcha. That over there by when they built the Beis Hamikdash, and he couldn't. That's why they didn't do Yom Kippur that year, and they didn't do it, during Sukkot. They had to do it a week beside Sukkot because they can't be marv simcha b'simcha. Just see, it goes back to it's a Gilui Kra by Shlomo Melech that it can't be marv simcha b'simcha. We Yishalmi Darish Midiksiv Malei Shua Zois. Okay, there we darshan out from that by Lavan. Lavan was a Lamdan according to this. With Yerushalmi, the Lavan knew you can't aim Arba Simcha b'Simcha. So Malish Shvazos, so only then marry the second one, because it can't be Nosei Shtei Nashim together aim Arba Simcha b'Simcha. So Lavan was also Batam Nira Ktsas. The kamosha ein osa mitzvahs chavilos to be in she libo panui la mitzvah achas v'leyafana atzmo hemena. Similar to mitzvahs chavilos, you need your leiv panui la mitzvah achas. You shouldn't be involved in something else. Dechen simcha b'simcha ye libo panui b'simcha. So the same thing, but you can't have your libo panui b'simcha. It has to be the same inyan as chavilos. So it comes out that the inyan of chavilos and marvin simcha b'simcha are really all main inyan echad, that they're all sort of learned out together from Shlomo Melech. That you can't have you have to be panui for one thing while you have to be focused on that mitzvah while you're doing it, not to get mixed up with another mitzvah or the other simcha that gets all mixed up.
I found it strange that he's bringing a raya to something that he has. I mean, Xeris Akasav or Gilui Kra. He's bringing a raya from somewhere else that or Dugma of how it works from Chavilos. And also that he says that the lashon is an interesting lashon. It's Tam Nira Kitsas. The Kimo but in general, why is he bringing Chavilos to explain Ein Marvin Simcha b'Simcha? We don't see. we don't have like a pasuk of chavilos. We have a pasuk from.
No, but so I guess it's like one of these like things that we say svara here. It's like a svara deraisa. That when the Torah said to do something, it said to do it with kavanah. And Rishon Zalman told me once that even according to the mitzvah, Manda Amar mitzvahs ain't tzrichas kavanah, which so he said that's only in and of ikuv. That it's not ma'akiv if you don't have kavanah. But for sure, the kuli alma, everyone agrees that you're supposed to have kavanah. It's a chelik of the mitzvah to have kavanah. The shal is just is it ma'akiv if you don't. We happen to pass and it is ma'akiv. That's halach l'maisa in Sima Samach and Hilchos Kriyashma, we pass in mitzvah tzrichas kavanah. But even the mandamar in tzrichas kavanah, there's for sure a din. It's a svara deraisa that the Torah said to do a mitzvah. It's like a svara deraisa to do with kavanah. So it's like a chelik of that svara deraisa. That's a svara pshuta that in the Mahalach Tosfos is going that it's an union of kavanah, that it's a chelik of mitzvah tzrichas kavanah, that the Torah shouldn't want you to be involved in one mitzvah while you're doing another one. So it's one of these things that the Gemara will say svara.
That's it. Like, why did he need to bring a riot? Like, it wasn't self-evident from Ein Marvin Simcha b'Simcha. Like, it was like I found it that was like funny to me. Like, I understand like why it was necessary. Like, what?
Because I guess maybe he's bothered by the fact that like what, too much simcha? What's your problem? You know, it's like Noach Weinberg used to say. That's how we'd ask people. You know. People have one kid, you know, and say, "What's the greatest joy in your life? You know, what are you going to look back on? Is it going to be your business, whatever?" No, my kids. What? So why one? You know, too much joy? You're worried about having too much joy? Like, does it bother? Like, well, what's the problem? So have more simcha. What's wrong? So because that simcha is simcha shel mitzvah. It's neveh mitoch the kavanas mitzvah, and so from chavilos, where it's nothing to do with simcha, but it's just kavanas mitzvah. So the way he's understanding it. That shows us that the simcha shel mitzvah really is neveh. It flows from the kavanas mitzvah in general, and so that's why you can't take away from one with the other. I'm asking, it's a little difficult, but one thing you do see in Tosfos clearly is the point we're bringing out from Tosfos. However, you know that fine shot what you're saying, that final thing, but sof kol sof you do see in Tosfos that it's a din in the kavanas agabra. It's not a din in like the Rashbam and the other Tosfos. And the Rashi and Soto are learning that it's a din it's like a design of mitzvah that's near Lov Kamasoi. It's a whole different parsha, it's a whole different thing. Now, I had just a basic question on this whole thing. You can ask that the Shulchan Aruch. I don't have the Shulchan Aruch here, but I have a Mishnah Berurah. You see it there, and Kusari Aleph. It's a very chashav halacha to see. Just 1 second, let's loud up there. Close the door. Very sodistic halacha and sodistic taz in Kusad Aleph Siv Gimel. There it says Asur lasos malacha ba'odem mavarech. You can't do malacha while you're making a bracha. So the Mishnah Berurah here brings down, it's really all in the Taz. He says, you're making a bracha while you're doing other things. It looks like you're just doing it b'derech mikra. But if you're the tashmish kal asur lasos, even you're just a little thing, you know, you're some little not big deal. This is the most common thing is when you're saying asher yatzar, right? Somebody said, my wife told me over from one of these Rebbitzins that spoke once about that. Asher yatzar is not tefillas haderech. It's always like, you know, as you're saying, as we're running somewhere, saying Asher yatzar. So he says, Shalo yasak v'davar shetzarach losum libo elav. Kasav ataz yeshli zar. This is Mishnah Berurah at the end of Kusari Aleph. Kasav ataz yeshli zar shelo la'ayin afilu b'divrei Torah b'shashim v'orach b'chsamazon kizeh mora al hiyos b'chsamazon etzla rak outside hamikra by his damen. It shows that you're just doing the mikra, even if you're just, you know, I'm just, you know, while I'm saying Asher yatzar, I'll just go a quick look at this Beis Levi, you know, whatever. I'm not going to really be ma'ayin. I just want to. For lav dafka b'rich samazon, not only benching, hudin k'sosik b'tfila, or be'eza bracha acheres. Nichla b'maimor tarasenu. This is nichlal, and what the Torah says, b'imtelchu imi keri. In Parshas B'chukosai, the Torah says a lot of klalos lo'olenu. If you holach imo b'keri, which means b'mikra, lashon keri, lashon mikra, Rashi says. Dainu shelo yu mitzvos etzlenu al tzad ha-mikra v'yizdamnus ba'alma. We don't just do I'm doing something else, and b'mikra I'm also doing a mitzvah. It's like the Maisa with Levi Yitzchak Raditchever, famous Raditchever. They used to always look to be Malamed Schus on Klal Yisrael. So once he was passing by they used to have different klois in Europe. They would have like the different shuls for the I don't know, the water carriers klois and the sewing klois, and they were all davening together. So he was once walking by the horse and buggy klois, those that have to deliver stuff with horse and buggy. And in the middle of Shachris, he saw one of the guys comes out with his talis and tefillin, is hitching up his horse, whatever, while he's a huge bizayon, his talis and tefillin to davening. He's out there hitching up the horse. So he said, Rebbeinu Shalom, look how beautiful Klal Yisrael are, that even when they're hitching up their horses, they daven. There was look bim lavet schus, but the Maisa to do such things. So the Taz says that's nichlal and lo selcho imi b'keri. So things derech his damus. The Taz goes on to say, in Bir Lacha brings down there. The Bir Lacha says, but it's from the Taz that hu adin kishoisik beiza mitzvah yasik az v'davar acher. While you're being osik in a mitzvah, you shouldn't be osik in something else. And then the second Bir Lacha is, or the Taz goes on to say that even if in another mitzvah you shouldn't be osik in. The Taz says that if you're osik one mitzvah, since osik mitzvah pater min a mitzvah, so the second mitzvah becomes like a davar rishus, and now I'm doing a davar rishus while I'm doing a mitzvah, then it's nichlal in lo selchi imi b'keri. So once we see all this, then what do we need a whole sugya of chavilas for, if we already have lo selchi imi b'keri, that I can't be osik in one mitzvah or any other asik while I'm involved in one mitzvah, in this mitzvah. So I think the answer is perhaps that's talking over there about divrei rishus, other things besides a mitzvah that I'm doing. And the Taz is machadish that if I'm already involved in one mitzvah, now another mitzvah comes along, so that second mitzvah now is like a dvar rishus, because I'm osik mitzvah pater min a mitzvah, so I'm just doing it because I want to. So then it's no different than doing any other asik. I'm just osik b'davar rishus. So to be osik in a davar rishus while I'm doing a mitzvah, so then that's lo selchi imi b'keri. However, if I have two mitzvahs in front of me, they're both mitzvahs. I'm approaching this whole Indian of to do a mitzvah, and I have two mitzvahs to do. So perhaps I can do them together, because I'm not being osik in davar acher. Now I can't say one is more or the other. I'm not being osik in any of them yet. Now I'm trying to decide. I'm going to bench. I'm going to do things on one coast, or I have kiddush in front of me, and I have benching in front of me, and I have one coast. Is that considered one mitzvah? If there's two mitzvahs, then I can't say lo selch imi b'keri because I'm a derech mikra, because it's all avodas Hashem, it's all mitzvahs. I'm coming to do two mitzvahs together. So I wouldn't know that from Kusadik Aleph. So I need a new sugi here to tell me there's an Indian chavilah. So now I have to decide, like you said, yes, I sometimes came out split hairs to know if it's considered one mitzvah in some way, or it's considered two mitzvahs that has a chisaron of a masui. That if it's all really one mitzvah, then it's not mixed of kamasui. I'm not sure that answers up the svara of masui. I'm not sure how it answers up the svara of kavana. Right? If I put it together and I find there's some way to consider it Indian echad, then I can say how it takes away the Indian of masui. But I'm not sure how it takes away the Indian of it being having full kavana, because unless you say that I can have a wider, I can stretch my kavana. If it's all Indian echad, then I can sort of have one bigger kavana klalis on this whole Indian of, let's say, Allah Avar on Dusha Shabbos or whatever. It's in some way it's one, then it doesn't take away from the kavana, because it's really in a way, if it's one mitzvah, akama it's one mitzvah, maybe it's also one kavana as well. Maybe it's considered like a broader kavana. Perhaps you could say something like that. Okay, there's a lot more to talk about. We only really just sort of started, but we're sort of out of time. Yes.
Can I ask 2 unrelated questions?
I
mean, after everyone's done. After everyone's done.
Same call?
Same guy. I can hang up and call back. So
wait, let me personally read a ksuba.
Stop the recording.
yeah, we stopped the recording because it's not
Okay. All right. So I'll where's the record button?
Okay, I have to run. Thank you so much, Harav.
Go to
Shabbat shalom,
Shabbos
everyone.
Smicha.
here.
Shabbos Smicha.
Shabbos, everyone.